Filibuster.
Thank you. I'm new. I haven't quite learned the skills of just talking endlessly about nothing, but I'm sure it will come naturally as time goes on. In that vein, Mr.
Given that you sold cars, I don't believe you.
Oh, you know what? You know what?
Well, I did not say that.
I was trying to improve my life status from car dealer, and I went backwards with politician. If I get my law degree, I'm toast. But anyway, Mr. Meador, back to you, who is a lawyer, so I mean that in the nicest way possible. Thank you for agreeing to serve again in this administration. If you were to describe your job to a 13-year-old, is that right? How would you describe your job?
Senator, I believe my job is to make the lives of American families better. And that is primarily through protecting the markets that they rely upon to put food on the table, to get health care for their children, and just to go about their daily business. And that includes competitive markets so that they have options that are affordable and high quality, and that in the midst of trying to provide for their families, they aren't deprived of their wealth or security through scams and other fraudulent behavior.
And as you think about this job that you're about to undertake, what would be your top 1 or 2 priorities?
Senator, I'm focused on sort of the kitchen table issues, again, going to those things that affect the average person on a daily basis, making sure that they have competitive markets that provide affordable housing, energy, healthcare, food. All of those, I think, should be top of mind for the FTC.
That's great. And having your fellow commissioners here to support you shows that the agency really should be free of politics and should be somebody that does the right thing. So I appreciate your willingness to serve. Mr. Kratsios, I appreciate you being here and your willingness to serve. I also applaud your parents being here. As you know, I'm a first-generation immigrant myself from Colombia, South America. So we know the Spanish Empire was the greatest empire, not the Greek Empire. But appreciate you being here. I'm sure your parents are extremely proud of you, serving once and now doing it again. Just want to remind my Democrat colleagues that you were unanimously confirmed, and to keep that in mind despite their tendencies to want to be partisan. You're taking on a big job, report directly to the President of the United States. It'll be great to have a President of the United States who understands artificial intelligence and not somebody who actually needed it injected into his brain. So that's a step up from the previous administration. In the previous administration, the person who had your job talked a lot about electrifying America. What is your thoughts on this idea that everybody should have electric stoves, everybody should have electric cars, and there's only one size fits all? Is that based on science in your mind?
I think to solve the energy problems of this country, we have to take an all-the-above energy approach, and electricity is obviously one part of it, but there's a whole lot more there. And I look forward to working with the President's Energy Dominance Council to make sure that's a reality.
So forcing everybody to drive electric cars even though they don't want it seems like probably not science-based or practical.
No, the government should not be forcing anyone to drive a particular type of vehicle.
That's good to hear. In California, maybe they haven't quite heard that memo. But speaking of California, objectively a pretty state run by terrible people, would you think that California should set standards for the rest of the country? Meaning, do you think it's up to California to decide what kind of cars people in Ohio should buy?
I'm not very familiar with how the policy around that works, but I think in principle that probably is something that should be looked at and more carefully.
Yeah, I would think my colleagues would want to have the federal government set even standards for the entire country and not have one state or another. That makes sense, right? We do regulate interstate commerce here in the federal government. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen that in the technology policy domain around issues like privacy. When if there's an inability to create a federal privacy law, you end up having a patchwork sort of created by states, and that ultimately doesn't do the best thing for industry or for consumers.
And do you think it's also important that business gets certainty for as long a horizon as humanly possible, and not think about a policy that lasts for a year or 2 or 3 or 4, but rather over maybe a decade?
Yes, I think regulatory certainty is a big driver on encouraging investment, particularly in science and technology. So I do believe that, yes.
And we should be, I think you would agree, we should be the leaders. I mean, this is the country that innovation is born here. That we should be the leaders not only in artificial intelligence, quantum computing, blockchain technology, the human-machine interaction. These are all the things that are ahead of us. And how do you see government's role in that? Like, what do you see philosophically the role of the government making that happen?
Yeah, so I think the government plays essentially, I think, a role in four categories. The first is on early stage basic competitive R&D. So this is investing federal dollars in areas where the private sector is not incentivized to do yet. And we've been doing that for 50 or 60 years. We need to keep doing that. The second piece is around regulations. And the way I usually think about it is removing barriers to innovation. So finding ways that you can actually unlock the potential of these technologies and allow them to flourish and not have regulations get in the way. The fourth is through workforce programs. So it's critical that both we have individuals who are able to actually become the next great scientists and technologists to make these discoveries, and also prepare American workers to wield these technologies in their daily life. And the fourth is around international engagement. We as a government need to make sure that we're partnering with our allies on using these technologies globally and pushing back on actions like the ones that the CCP take to try to push their technology globally.
Well, that's a fantastic answer. Great job. Look forward to having both of you unanimously confirmed, getting you in office, and most importantly, having you visit the greatest state in America, Ohio.
Senator Kim.
Yeah, thank you, Chair.